Hey everybody, how's it going? So, got a new fun thing to share here. This is ATEM Micro Panel. Blackmagic announced back at NAB, and just now started shipping. And I was able to get a hold of one. Actually, did make a purchase on this. This is not something on loan from Blackmagic. This is my own personal one that I'm going to keep and use and incorporate into my workflow. So. Yeah, so I will be taking questions as we go. So if you have a question, you can leave that down in the chat, and I'll kind of be monitoring that as we go. The questions don't necessarily have to be about the ATEM Micro Panel. We'll probably run out of questions about that pretty quick. So if you got other things that you wanted to ask about with regard to video or audio production, feel free. So we got a few people saying hello in the chat. Hello everybody, thanks for joining. If you don't mind, everybody who's here, just drop a note and say where you're watching from, where you're located. And I always like to see that. So thanks everybody. Welcome Ian. I haven't seen a comment from you in a little while. Thanks for being here. Let's see. So I'm not going to be able to incorporate graphics for the chat into the stream. I still haven't come up with the right solution for that for my basement studio here. I will at some point. I just haven't taken the time to do that just yet. So yeah, they start shipping like 3 weeks after a gig where wouldn't have been so helpful. Anyway, okay, so we got some Arizona, Scotland, Poland, New Zealand, Holland, Philippines, Toronto, India, Alberta, Oxfordshire, Holland, Israel, awesome. Phoenix, you got quite a wide variety here. A lot of people are from around the world. Netherlands, very cool. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm sure some of you people it's going to be middle of the night. So, yeah. Anyway, so you guys can keep commenting, and I will pop in from time to time to check. So, for anybody who's not familiar with what this thing is, this is Blackmagic's. Actually cut to it here. This is Blackmagic's inexpensive, quote-unquote, inexpensive control panel for the ATEM switchers. Their other panels start at a little over $3,000. This one is currently, well, it's $675 here in the U.S. So it's quite a bit less expensive than the other alternatives that they manufacture. More expensive than some of the other things you can get in order to do it, in order to do control of the ATEM switchers. But this is their first real attempt to make something more affordable. So we'll be doing an unboxing. I'll be taking that time to set it up here on this video, and we'll work through any configuration quirks live. Hope everything goes well. I'm anticipating everything should go well. I've already pre-installed the latest ATEM software to make sure I don't have to do that here on the stream. So yeah, so we got Germany, Minneapolis, South Carolina, Finland, Northern Virginia, another one from Netherlands, UK. Yeah, another Phoenix. Awesome. So, okay, I'll unbox this, and then I'll come back and answer some of the questions that you guys are posting in the chat. So as I'm going, just feel free to drop the questions in there at any point, and I will try and find them amongst all the other comments when we get back to that. So let's see. Actually, I'm going to cut to my overhead camera for this. So turn this around here. I'm never 100% sure whether my overhead camera should be facing from my point of view or from the opposite point of view. Because if it's from my point of view, it's actually opposite of what the other cameras are. All right, so start by cutting the plastic. This literally arrived on my doorstep about 2 hours ago, I think it was. So in the middle of a meeting, got the ring at the doorbell and required a signature, so I had to step out of a meeting for a moment, but it is what it is, right? Hey, it clings to me, awesome. So there's the box. It has kind of the same styling as ATEM Mini Extreme, I think it is. Yeah. So they've got a couple different design languages that they use for some of their packaging. So the typical closed cell foam that Blackmagic likes to use. There is the unit itself. We'll do a walkthrough on that. A USB-C to USB-C cable. That's going to be for control and for charging. This has to have a battery built in. And then some of your typical literature. So welcome, a sticker, and then a reminder that you can get DaVinci Resolve free, for the free version there. So I think Blackmagic really wants to be Apple, don't they? With some of their way they do their packaging and whatnot. So, alrighty. So, move that out of the way. Take a look at the panel itself. There it is. And we've got 10 buttons for preview, 10 buttons for program. There's a shift button, so you can actually have each of those rows control 20 different sources. You've got buttons up here for controlling, well, this is the, most of these are for controlling the upstream keys. And then we've got buttons here for choosing which mix effects engine you want to use. Buttons for selecting the different transition types. One for a cut transition, one for auto transition, a little slider in place of a T-bar, and your buttons over here for controlling your downstream key. There's a button up here for playing back macros. So from what I understand, you hold that down and then press one of the numbered buttons in order to trigger the macros on there. All right, so we can plug in USB. We can turn the battery on and off here. I'm guessing this probably has not been charged, or if it has been, it's not a full charge. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug in the USB on this, and we'll see what happens. I should probably follow some instructions or something, right? All right, so minimize some of my stuff here, and then let you guys actually see what I'm doing on the computer here. So I heard it make it sound. So I should mention that this one, rather than controlling the ATEM over the network, it controls it over either Bluetooth or USB. So there's been some controversy around that. Not everybody loves that. A lot of people, including myself, would have liked to have seen Ethernet on the device directly instead of having to go through USB or Bluetooth. Okay, so I wonder if there's something I need to do in here at all. Remote, no. Maybe I ought to actually read the instructions. How would that be? So, okay. Well, let's see if there's anything in the box. Probably not. These would require you to go online. So that's just a, is this just a generic? Yeah, it's just a generic welcome. So, okay, nothing in the box. So, we will, well, let's see. Launch ATEM setup and see if anything shows up in there. Now shows my Constellation switcher, but no control panel. Okay. All right. When all else fails, read the manual. Right. So let me find the downloads and the file. Okay. Let's see what we got here. Constellation Mini Television Studio Production Studio switchers. I don't see anything there. Yeah, it doesn't quote unquote just work. So there's something we need to do to set this up. And I don't know what that is. So maybe we'll, if anybody in the chat has popped up and said anything. Okay, yeah, so nobody's saying anything there. All right, so it looks like we're having to explore this because I don't really see anything in the software. So let's go to Blackmagic website and see what it says there. So go to products, and it's going to be under production switchers. All right. I assume it's going to be under the panels. Scroll, 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 scroll. Okay, there's a micro panel. Okay. Doesn't really say much there, does it? No manual download link. We're on our own to figure this out. Okay, this could be interesting. So ATEM Micro Panel controls, ATEM Software Control Panel running on the host computer. So is there an application for it? This video hub set up. No, I don't see anything there. I'll just search through all apps. If anybody else has already figured this out, you can speak up in the chat. I'm not seeing anything obvious here. Maybe I can try the Constellation manual and see if it has anything in it. Okay. Okay, there we go. It is in the manual. All right. Connecting via USB. Okay, blah, blah, blah. You connect your micro panel to via Bluetooth for increased flexibility. Blah, blah, blah. Connect to your USB port. USB required to charge the internal battery and access ATEM setup utility to change your button mapping and change button colors. All right, so I did launch ATEM setup, and it doesn't show it. Click on plus, and it's looking for an IP address. Interesting. I know the cable is good. The USB cable is good. I was just using it a bit ago, and we heard it ding. So it did get added to the device manager. It's probably going to be under. Is that the unknown device? Yes, it was. It was the unknown device. The computer didn't know what it is. Let's see if plugging it back in fixes it. Device descriptor request failed. All right. Might try Bluetooth just to get it going a little quicker. Well, that's interesting. I flipped the cord around, turned it upside down, and it didn't have the error that time. Very interesting. Okay, ATEM setup. Oh, still doesn't show it. All right, well, let's try Bluetooth. So go into computer settings. Yeah. Okay, Bluetooth and devices. Add Bluetooth. Okay, so I'm guessing press and hold. Yep. It should show up here. I assume I don't need to turn the battery on if it's connected on USB. try it anyway. Okay, it's flashing and stopped flashing. Go back to the manual maybe. I don't usually have this much trouble setting up devices. Usually I just figure it out. Okay, move the battery switch to on. Okay, I did that, yeah. And then press the Bluetooth button. Yep, did that. Not showing. Try again. Add Bluetooth. I know Bluetooth works. This mouse is Bluetooth. This isn't going as smoothly as I would have hoped. Has anybody else gotten one of these yet? Or do you plan to get one of these things? Take a look and see what's going on in chat while we're... Okay. Battery on off button marked. Yeah. Turn it on, yeah. So I did, yeah. So it switches on. I do have the latest ATEM software. I did that just before. So yeah, a lot of you mentioned in the latest software. I did that before I started the live stream. So it is running ATEM 9.6.1. Let's see what we got going on here. USB device not recognized. It doesn't like. Oh, there we go. So it just popped up in Bluetooth. I wonder if the battery was just dead, and that's what the reason for all this. Okay, ready to go. All right, there it is, connected. So, alrighty, go to overhead camera. Bingo, there we are. So it's connected and working. It's on Bluetooth, I guess. So the USB didn't work. Alrighty, okay. So yeah, we got our preview row, our program row, and then shift to select different sources, additional sources. If you have that set up. So apparently we can go into ATEM setup and choose what sources these buttons actually go to. So I'm going to do that. So go back to ATEM setup. No, not there. All right. Okay, so Bluetooth is getting us connected to the software. So we have that. And yeah, nothing. Remote doesn't do it. So according to the manual, we use ATEM setup to do it. So okay, see if yes, I did reboot after installing the software. Okay, so back to the manual. Recalling macros, yeah. Using ATEM setup. Connect the ATEM panel to your computer via USB. I wonder if it just doesn't like my cable, so I'm gotta grab a different cable. So let me do that. I'll be right back, and you guys can enjoy looking at the panel while I step away for a moment. I found a cable. Can't use the cable that came with it because it's USB-C on both ends, and the computer I'm using doesn't have USB-C. Even though it's a pretty modern machine. It's a little desktop computer. Intel Nook. Doesn't have USB-C. Alright, so we'll try this other cable. See if that... Okay, it definitely behaves a little differently there. Back to ATEM setup. There we go. Okay. Okay, so we can choose the button mapping here. So show the buttons there. Switcher to control. So this is 1ME Constellation 4K. So it looks like they map cameras 1 through 8, and the 2 media players. And with shift, you get cameras 9 and 10, and then for the last 6 inputs, black color bars, color 1, color 2, media player 1 key, media player 2 key. So in theory, pressing shift on here should give me the secondary sources. So, oh, I didn't, yeah, I'll show you guys the software there. Sorry, I forgot to switch that. All right, so yeah, so you choose which model of switcher, and then it maps. It looks like it has an automatic mapping there. And all right, so let me set it to the default for the switcher I have, and then save. Okay. It doesn't seem to be doing anything different when I press the shift button there, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so shift, I did camera 10. Okay, yeah, so that did work. So if I dissolve to that, okay, yeah, it is working. It's doing what it's supposed to. Okay, so it doesn't, the buttons don't change in any way when you press the shift button there. So yeah, so we can, well, because I can do this, so select camera 5, and then go there. There we go. And turn on the key there, so you guys can see me in the window. And it's working. It's doing what it's supposed to do. And good. We're in good shape. Alrighty. So yeah, that's about all there is to it, I guess. It's not a super sophisticated device. It gives you a way to control the ATEM switchers via the ATEM software. So I'm almost positive that Blackmagic is going to be using a proprietary protocol for communication between this and ATEM software, so probably won't be able to use this for anything else. That's kind of their typical behavior, Blackmagic's typical behavior for these types of devices, you know, like their DaVinci panels and whatnot. They've got them locked down so that they can only work for their intended use and nothing else. So I'd be pretty surprised if they did anything else. So anyway, so yeah, there we go. That's about all there is to it. So with that, let's actually go in the chat and look to see if there are any questions that we can answer here. All right, going back to the very beginning. Any questions that have come in here? So, how do you reconfigure the buttons? Guessing there's a setup app for that. Yes, so that it uses just the ATEM setup app. So you plug in with USB, and then you can reconfigure what the buttons do there. So it looks like you can only reconfigure the main 10 buttons. So, all right. Digital art video, looking into ASUS ProArt display OLED, blah, 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 blah. Do you have any experience with this monitor? Not with that monitor specifically, no. I've used, I have 2 different models of ASUS ProArt monitors that I use regularly, and then my main laptop that I use these days is an ASUS ProArt StudioBook 16 with an OLED panel. So it's kind of in that same family. It's calibrated just like those monitors are. So but I have not used that particular monitor. So, all right. So Neil asking, why did you buy this? I ask because you obviously have the 2ME panel. Well, there's a lot of situations where the 2ME panel is just too big. If I need to do a setup with more than a couple of cameras and I need to transport things with just my truck and I don't have my trailer, that panel is huge, especially when I put it in the case that I got for it. I got a huge Pelican case for it, and it takes up half the bed of my truck just by itself. So I could put 3 or 4 cameras in that same amount of space. And so if I have this and I'm doing a small event, relatively small event, I can take this along, throw it in my backpack. And so, yeah. But also, I can use this as a way of controlling a second switcher or an additional ME or whatever. So it's just there kind of to augment what I've already got. I don't think I'm going to be able to make this work with the switcher I have in my trailer. It's one of the older Production Studio, 2ME Production Studio 4K models. And it doesn't, well, it does work with newer software, but I'm guessing there's probably some compatibility issues there. And then Blackmagic doesn't even list it in the drop down here, I don't think. Yeah, they don't. They don't list it in the drop down. They do have an other switcher model, so maybe it'll work. I'll have to give it a try and then report back and see what how that goes. So, but yes, I'll probably use it with my fly pack more than anything else. So yeah. Let's see. With this release, I'm still expecting some sort of Resolve migration towards full production using switcher, replay, etc. So we'll see. Has anybody in the chat actually used the instant replay features that are in Resolve 19 yet? I have not. I have not done an event where it would make sense to do that just yet. I'm still using vMix for replay, and I intend to continue using vMix for replay because I need more capabilities than what Resolve has. And there are some requirements for how you get video into Resolve that I don't think I have met just yet. It requires some newer hardware I don't have. So yeah. Alrighty. If 700 quid is a lot, you really don't want to know how much the remote control for your Grass Valley switchers. Oh, I understand. Yeah, I get it. I'm I totally hear you. Just for people who are used to buying Blackmagic ATEM switchers, you know, where you can get an HD 4-channel switcher for $295, a $700 panel is going to be a lot to them. So, yeah. Some of these other questions or other posts here are about getting the panel set up and working. So, let's see. So it wasn't a driver. It wasn't the fact that the software wasn't up to date. Yeah. So it was really the fact that the USB cable I was using, it didn't like it. So once I switched to a different cable, it seemed to work. I'm going to be doing a video pretty soon about how USB-C is an absolute disaster. I'm just waiting on a couple pieces of equipment to come in to do the demonstration on that. Because USB-C really is a disaster. Yeah. So I do have low latency turned on my stream. So yeah. Alrighty. Okay. I actually got some real questions coming in here now. And if you can adjust USB to companion and have it be a companion controller rather than ATEM software, probably not. Probably not. So, can you switch sources if ATEM control is in the frontmost window? Yes. Yeah. I have not actually had ATEM software as the primary window. So it's not acting like a keyboard. It actually is a USB device or Bluetooth device that's communicating directly with the software. So yeah, the ATEM software control doesn't have to have the focus. So, yeah. Solid light indicates page 1, blinking is page 2. Yes, so yeah, I should show that. So if you're on a source that's on page 1, the lights are solid. If you're on a source that's on page 2, the light blinks. So if I do Shift 2 here, which is programmed for source 10, then it blinks. So that behavior is basically the same as their full-size panels. So, and someone in the chat there asked about the feel of it. So they use the same buttons on this as they use on their other panels. So yeah, it's going to feel the same. So the big differences here are, one, that doesn't work over Ethernet. It's USB and Bluetooth only, and it doesn't have the screens, so you don't have labels as to what the buttons are actually doing, which is kind of a big deal, honestly. But yeah, it's nice to have something that's officially supported. And it's just going to work. So someone asked me why I don't just use X keys. Well, I mean, I do sometimes, but X keys. The big issue there is that in the past we've used just macros software to have X keys integrate with the ATEM switcher. Ever since ATEM software version 9 came out, that has stopped working. So, you can still do X keys panels to control switcher by going through Companion or through Central Control. Both of those have some issues. Start with Companion. You set up. That's what I'm doing. So there's an X keys panel right there, and that's going through Companion to control the switcher. The way you set it up is really weird. Like the way that they number the buttons is just very strange. Instead of going across, it's like up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And you have to modify the size of the button layout in Companion in order to access more than the first 12 buttons or whatever, the first 10 buttons or whatever it is on your panel. In addition to that, I've never been able to figure out a way to set the backlights to red. I can do blue, but I have not been able to figure out how to do red. So, yeah. Alrighty. So I would rather use Scarhoy controller for that price than one very locked down device. Scarhoy doesn't have a lot of options that are kind of in that ballpark. So, yeah, I mean, the Scarhoy stuff is great. It's really very well made. It's very powerful. Does a lot of very cool things. So, and it's going to require a little bit more setup than with this. This thing, you literally, once we figured out the USB cable was the problem, you literally plug it in and it should just work. So, yeah. Alright, how's it feel the panel? Buttons feel like the same as the large BM panel. Yeah, they are the same buttons, so, yep. Okay, building a small scale control surfaces like this because I see the need end up costing a bit more than expected, but still reasonable and a nice small size. Yeah, I suspect we're gonna keep seeing more solutions for this. The ones that are out there, there's some great options out there, but I think there's still some opportunities for people to come up with other solutions for controlling switchers. So yeah. If it just interacts with ATEM software, then all switchers should work, but we will see. So that's probably true, but I've also noticed that ATEM software versions 9 and newer are a little weird with my older ATEM. So like the hyperdeck control stops working now when I have the newer ATEM software with an older switcher. So my 2ME Production Studio has not received any firmware updates in quite a long time, and so it's going to be on a much older version of the protocol than what the ATEM software is. So I'll give it a try. I do have a computer in my trailer that has ATEM software version 9 on it, but the majority of them there, I'm still on version 8 because it's more. I don't know, it just works better with the switcher that I have there in the trailer. So, yeah. I always found Blackmagic pricing strange when a panel costs more than the switchers. A lot of that has to do with the buttons. So, these buttons are not cheap. So I suspect Blackmagic is not making much on this thing. And so when you find another switcher that has buttons that are as high quality as these, it's going to be as expensive or more so. So like the ATEM Minis, there's a reason they use the rubber dome switches. They're a lot cheaper. So, yeah. Alrighty. Okay. We've seen USB cables. Lay mini device. Blah blah blah. Okay, so can you change the keycap label underneath the cap? It looks like you probably could. I don't think I want to really try and pry on that, but if they are the same buttons as other devices, that should be something you can pop off and then provide your own labels. Can't tell with 100% certainty there, but it looks like there might be a piece of plastic underneath there that has a number on it. So I'll have to try that another time and see. Yeah. Let's see. Player states normal latency on me. Yeah. So the power of this panel is that it uses the same. That it's the same across the panels and software. Makes it easy. Yeah. So the layout is going to be very similar to their other panels, and so if you've got the muscle memory for where the buttons are and the feel for them, this is going to be very natural, very easy to use. So. Timecode jamming from Windows also stopped working with ATEM Software Control 9.x, but has since been updated. They really revamped it with 9.x. Blackmagic's made a ton of changes with the way they handle timecode. So, yeah, that's not surprising. Like most of the new constellations, basically with their entire current switcher lineup, they've eliminated all the timecode inputs and outputs, and they basically say that your switcher is going to generate the time code that you're using, and it's either going to be free run from the time you powered it on, or it's going to be the time of day, one of the two. So, the 1ME constellation does require more than 20 buttons. Can you connect it to a 2ME to see what's possible in button mapping? Well, it's just there's going to be more. It's going to be more of the sources, more sources listed, and so you'll have access to any of the 20 or up to 20 of any of the available options there. So nothing unusual there. And then that works pretty similar to the way that the panels and the bigger panels themselves work. So you're just configuring it through software instead of through the device's built-in menus. The 4ME Broadcast Studio works with HyperDeck and ATEM Software Control. No problem. Just does not list at least newly recorded file until you restart. So the problems I have with are actually more significant than that. The user interface is scrambled. So it's not that the software can't control the HyperDecks. It's just that the buttons are all messed up, and so it's next to impossible to actually control and click on the buttons that you want in order to control the HyperDeck. So Petra is saying there's no fade to black button, luckily. So I didn't really realize this was a thing until not that long ago, that there's a lot of hate out there for the big fade to black button that's on the ATEM Mini series switchers. It's never bothered me. I never gave it a second thought. I mean, I actually do use that button at the end of an event. So the fact that it was there, I was like, oh, great, it's there, I can use it. But apparently there's a lot of people that hate the fact that it's there and it's so big and it's positioned where it is. So, yeah, for someone to be glad that there is no fade to black button on this panel is not a surprise. So, but you can always program it into a macro. So if somebody who needs it, you can program it into a macro. So that's something I had to look into, like how you determine which macros are on which buttons. All right, Angus. Thank goodness that fade to black buttons need to be covered for safety, and they are on the advanced panels. So yeah, so you don't actually accidentally bump into one. So I don't think I've ever accidentally hit it. I know other people have, and that's where a lot of the hate comes from. But yeah. All right. All right, so yeah, okay. So back over here to the PC. So I don't see anything in here to configure the layout for which macros go to which buttons. I did discover here you can save your button mapping or load button mapping. So if you want to move it from one device, one computer to another, I assume that probably stays with the ATEM software rather than being stored in the panel. That's an assumption. I don't know. So I'll again have to do some testing to discover that. But nothing obvious as to which macro is which. Maybe we should actually go back to the manual here and look at the macro stuff. Alright, so, okay, downstream keys. To recall a macro, press and hold a macro button and select the macro from the eliminated buttons in the program row. When the macro button is pressed, the input button will illuminate green. If the macro saved to the slot, the input will remain blue. So if I hold down, okay, go back to my overhead here. So if I hold down the macro button, the 10 buttons just turn blue there. I don't have 10 macros programmed in here yet. I don't think. Maybe I do. Let me check. Oh, I've only got 5. So I've only got 5 macros in here. We can try one of these. So like macro 1 is overhead picture in picture. So, well, I'll just press it here. So hold down macro and press 1. Bingo, it did it. And then 2 is computer picture in picture. There we go. And 3 is aux picture in picture. I don't have an aux source hooked up right now, so that'll just be black. And then I've got 1. 4 is empty. 5 is overhead zoom with a 1.5 zoom. Overhead shot with 1.5 times zoom. And then 6 is overhead shot with a 2 times zoom. So yeah, it's just playing the macros by number. So yeah, I see 2 of me there. There we go. All right, so yeah, it works basically the way I would anticipate it that it should. Yeah, for anybody who has not used one of these panels, there's going to be one surprise you encounter if you want to use upstream keys, and that's that you have to hold down the buttons for which sources you want to be part of the next shot. So if you just want the key, part of the transition, let me go to overhead here. So if you just want the key for the part of the transition, you can just press the key button. But if you want to change the background as well, you press both of those simultaneously. So I thought, the first time I used one of these things, I thought it was broken because I go to press the key button and the background was going away and wasn't sure how that was supposed to work. But yeah, so that's how that works. Yeah. So, okay, go back to and get rid of the overhead. There we go. Okay, so what other questions we got here? Button mapping is per panel, so you can set up each panel differently. All right. What are the drop-downs next to the input drop-downs on the setup program? Drop-downs next to the input drop-downs. Go back to the software here. All right, so these right here. Set colors for the buttons, it looks like. So let me try that and then save. Yep. So if I go back over here, yep, you can see button 1 is now that blue color. So that's a feature that they have on the full-size panels. Fewer colors to choose from here, but so I use that to basically warn me about sources that I should be careful about cutting to. So I'll make them some other color. There we go. Other than just clear. It's kind of a warning. So like my graphic sources, my super source, those kinds of things, instant replay. So I keep my cameras with the default color and then make my other sources have some other color on the buttons. All right. We got some 3D printed caps to cover the fade to black on the minis. Nice. 3D printing for the win, yeah. Yeah, it's Angus saying, yes, I've accidentally I hit the fade to black on ATEM minis, never on a full-size panel. Yep. What do you think of a camera with 1-inch sensor for live streaming events? That's what I use. I've used those almost exclusively now for 8 years, and it's a great option. It's a great balance between the smaller sensors that you get with ENG cameras or older camcorders, and the full-size sensor you get with like a DSLR or mirrorless or one of those similar types of cameras. So the 1-inch sensor cameras do tend to be a little bit noisier than the cameras with larger sensors, just physics, right? So you don't have as much area to capture the photons coming in. But on the flip side, the 1-inch sensor camcorders give you some things that you can't really get on other cameras. Like, for example, super wide zoom ranges without breaking the bank with super expensive lenses. So you can spend $2,000 or $3,000 on a camcorder with a 1-inch sensor and get a 12 or 20 times zoom with the built-in lens. And doing that on like a DSLR or mirrorless or like even one of the Blackmagic studio cameras, it gets really expensive. So yeah, that's something that you need. If you need to be able to capture a wide range, then the camcorder is going to do that better. And also, if you want to do servo zoom and you're not willing to pay prices for ENG cameras and lenses, camcorders are really about the only way to do that. There are a handful of servo lenses you can put on some of these other cameras. Canon makes a few servo zoom lenses that with an EF mount that can be mounted on the Blackmagic 6K studio camera, for example. I did some testing on that, and it works, but it's got a lot of quirks. I had a hard time with that locking focus. It was always a little ahead or a little behind, no matter what. So, yeah. Okay, next question. What happens if you set your shifted state to a different color? That's a good question. So I'll go back to software. Does it even allow you to do that as a separate? It does. So yeah, so we'll say shifted, we'll go to blue on button 1 and save. Okay, and then there you go. So yeah, you press and hold shift, and then the button does change color when you're holding the shift button. So yeah, so that's what it does. That's cool. Like the full-size panels do work the same. Yeah, so I'll set that back to clear. Okay, all right, next question. How's this stacking up to the advanced panel 10? Well, I mean, the buttons are the same, but you don't have screens. So you're kind of guessing what each source is unless you change out the labels. It doesn't work over Ethernet. It works only over USB and Bluetooth. So you have to have a computer running ATEM software control in order to make it work. On the flip side, if you want something wireless, this can do that because you have the Bluetooth option. Yeah, let's see what other big. The lack of the screen with the menus, that's huge. Like you can configure pretty much every aspect of your switcher with that screen and menu system on the advanced panels. So in that case, you don't even have to have ATEM software control in order to use it. So I'm at a point now where I have events where I don't know, I never even launch ATEM software control at all because I've got the 2ME advanced panel. So yeah. Okay. So setting a color for layer 2 will allow for indication of shift being pressed. Yes, we did see that here a minute ago. In the process of building a studio and looking at new equipment, this and the Advanced Panel 10 are on our radar. If the Advanced Panel 10 is something you're considering and you got the budget for it, I would just do that. This thing is fine. You know, it's not a bad product. It's got nice buttons on it and it does what it's supposed to do. Not having the menus and not having the LCD screens telling you what the buttons do is a big deal. So, yeah. Alrighty. I totally missed this ever being announced. I just announced it a couple hours ago, like when this arrived at my doorstep. I wasn't sure when it was going to arrive for sure. and so I wanted to wait until I actually had it in my possession before I scheduled the live stream to unbox it. So, all right, is there a battery status readout in for the panel in the software? I didn't see one. Let me go back. Oh, yeah, right there. Yeah, right there, 99%. So it's charged. So in theory, if I unplug it, yeah, it should just stay on and still work. But in order to configure it, it does have to be plugged in with USB. So, all right, back to front camera. All right, and next question. Yeah, so Emerald Audiovisual Plus camcorders generally are parfocal. I always forget to mention that, but yes, camcorders generally are parfocal, and what that means for anybody who doesn't know is that when you focus on a subject, you can zoom in and zoom out, and that subject will stay in focus, which is something that you generally don't get with other types of cameras or lenses, specifically lenses that weren't designed specifically for video. So like most photography lenses are not parfocal. Every once in a while you find one, but if a lens has that feature, it's usually advertised pretty heavily because it's kind of a big deal. So, but yeah, camcorders almost always are parfocal, which is a huge benefit. I always forget to mention that when I have this discussion. So, all right, Camille, so which LCD monitors do you use? Any recommendations? Thanks. So I actually did a video about that not too long ago. So I use different monitors for different things. So when I want a decent size monitor and image quality can be just a little less than perfect, I go with LG 27-inch 4K monitors. And then the main reason I go with that one, even if I'm not shooting 4K, is because it accepts basically every video format under the sun up to 60 frames per second. So it works for 24 frame, works for 30 frame, which a lot of inexpensive HD monitors don't. So, I mean, if you go to your local big box store and pick up one of the inexpensive 24-inch monitors, it probably will not take a 30 frame per second signal. So I've kind of standardized on the LG monitors. Plus, it's super nice to have the 4K resolution when I want to use it with a computer. And I do shoot in 4K. I mean, this stream I'm doing right now is 4K. So 4K is kind of my normal workflow for anything I do for my channel. And then occasionally I do have customers ask for it as well. If I want something that's more color accurate, then the Asus ProArt series. Again, I mentioned that here a little bit ago. And one of the benefits for getting those is that if you're an Adobe Creative Cloud user, you get 3 months free of Creative Cloud. So you pick up one of those things and you get, it's basically $70 or $80 worth of software access for free. So when I want super accurate, I get out my Sony OLED. I've got a Sony OLED production monitor that I bought years ago. Not sure where I have that at the moment, but yeah, it's the PVM A170. They haven't made that for quite a while. But it's color calibrated. It's designed for colorists, and so when I need accurate color, that's the monitor I get out. I don't travel with it a lot. I only grab it when I know I'm going to be needing it. It's only 17 inches. That one's only 17 inches. They do have a 25-inch version of that, and they have newer versions that are 18 and 26 and 30-inch versions. But they're tremendously expensive. So the little 17-inch one I got was $4,000. The 25-inch version was $6,000. And if then you get up in the next line up, you're talking $20,000 to $30,000 or more for each of those monitors. So they get very expensive very fast. But because that monitor is so expensive, I don't risk getting damaged or lost or stolen unless I actually need it. But for the most part, when I'm working out of my trailer, for example, I use LG 4K monitors. They've worked really well, and the color accuracy is quite good. It's not perfect, but it is quite good. And like I say, they accept every video signal under the sun, and they do a really good job with interlace video. So if you ever have to work with interlace, they handle that quite well. I did try monitors from Dell and Samsung in my trailer. Hated them. They were awful. The Dells would always overscan with interlace video, and the Samsung monitors that I got didn't work with anything other than a 4K signal. So if I gave it, well, they worked with 1080 at 60 frame, but they didn't work with anything else, and just the image quality was not great on it. So yeah. Okay. Weary of the Bluetooth USB instead. So it is what it is. USB should be pretty reliable. I would assume, especially if you use the cord that they provided with the panel. So Ethernet would be better, but that's not what they gave us. So rather than Bluetooth wireless, I'd much more prefer it being standalone with the Ethernet and not having to have a PC running software for the switcher. I think everybody would pretty much agree with you, but it is what it is. So, Mark asking if I'm going to IBC this year. No, no plans to go to IBC. What do you expect to launch at IBC? Any Blackmagic goodies? I have no inside information on that whatsoever. I mean, I can always rattle off some of the products that I would like them to see, like them to announce that they have not. One of the big ones is replacement for the Smart View monitors. I don't think that's coming anytime soon. I would love for it to happen, but I think Blackmagic is enjoying the profit margin they have on their existing Smart View monitors, and they don't want to give that up by coming up with a newer product that costs them more to build. So, yeah. There's a rumor that Canon might launch another Cinecam on top of the C400. Interesting. So they've got quite a lineup now. So they've got, I think they don't do the 100 anymore, I don't think, but they've got 200, 300, 400, 500, 700. They have a 900? I don't remember. So anyway, I'm currently shopping around for some cameras for a big production I have going on next month. My camcorders, my 1-inch camcorders, they can't be gen locked, and I have to have gen lock for this event. And I also need something that has shallow depth of field, because we're going to have, the main problem is we have we're going to have an LED wall behind the presenters, and I need to do everything I can to minimize the amount of moire and the rolling associated with it. So rolling associated with lack of sync between the source and the screen. So I've been looking at some of the different options that are out there, and the C300, I believe, was one of the ones I was looking at. But I think I'm probably going towards the Sony FX9 at the moment. So I'll have to rent 4 of those for that event, and some lenses for them. Every these monitors with a Mac with Apple Silicon, I use the BenQ, and had a lot of problems with the M1. It isn't the monitor. Macs, so Apple Silicon Macs have been a nightmare for monitor output. I did a video about some ways to try and fix that in the past, but yeah, when Apple moved from Intel to Apple Silicon, they broke compatibility with a lot of displays. So yeah, you might have better luck with another type monitor, but essentially what's going on is Apple is outputting slightly non-standard timings with their HDMI signal, and so if you can run DisplayPort instead, you might have better luck, or USB-C, either of those. But HDMI has been a real problem for Macs since the Apple Silicon machines came out. The solution I've landed on for fixing that is to use an active cable, which actually tells the computer to send a DisplayPort signal, and then it converts it to an HDMI signal, and that tends to work better than just doing an HDMI signal directly. So, yeah. What's your opinion about GhostStream Deck Duet? I haven't used that. I'm not familiar with that, so I don't really have an opinion. So I forgot this, the R5C and C70. Yes, I did. So yeah, that's more cameras in that line. If you want to include the R5C, you could also talk about the R5 and the R5 Mark II and the R6 and the R6 Mark II, which actually make decent cinema cameras as well. So yeah, a lot of different options there. But anyway, but along the lines of different cameras, anybody watching, you guys have any recommendations for me? I need a camera with a long zoom range. I need to be able to go wide and tight. We're not going to have a ton of cameras, so we need to be able to. We have to cover not just the presenter on stage, but we also have to cover what's going on in the audience as well. And the main presenter is going to be standing in front of an LED wall, and it's kind of a mid-range LED wall, so the pixel density isn't super high. And I understand that the company that we're working with has a new controller, which is going to help us to take care of the rolling black bar issue. But we'll see. So, R5C has the proper cinema OS and is currently Canon's only 8K compatible Cinecam. 8K capable. Well, technically the R5 is 8K capable. Just wouldn't want to do it because it overheats in like 5 seconds. But yeah. What's the most stable way to run the ATEM software? Raspberry Pi 5. I just don't trust Windows not to crash on the laptop during the stream. Well, they don't have it for Linux. If you don't like Windows, you can run it on Mac, Mac OS. They have a Mac OS version of it. I've never had any trouble with it on Windows. So, if you want to get a fairly inexpensive computer, most of the problems people have with Windows are, well, either due to malware or bad software that gets installed on there, or they just get a cheap machine that is not stable. So Windows 10 and 11 are, well, Windows ever since version 7 have been very stable. So, does the new PXW Z200 support Genlock? No, it does not. That's an omission that we would have liked to have seen, but they're reserving that for higher end models. The Z280 does have Genlock on it, but it's an even smaller sensor. It's a 1/2-inch sensor on that one. It's a 3-chip, but each of those chips is only a 1/2-inch. So quite a bit smaller than the 1-inch that we've been using. So depth of field is probably going to be a problem, and we'll probably run into some wiring issues. The FX9 actually has a higher resolution sensor than what it needs for the 4K video that it shoots, but it also has some technology in it to try and reduce moire. So that's kind of why I've been leaning that way. Alrighty. My camera recommendation. Oh, wait, I skipped one. Canon literally just killed the Burano with the C400. So I'm sure people who are Sony fanboys would probably disagree, but to each their own, right? I don't have a dog in the race myself, but I've used both Canon and Sony quite a bit. I shot on Canon for years. I'm currently on Sony because I'm trying to match the existing cameras I've already got. But yeah, let's see. My camera recommendation is Sony ZV-E1. I've got the smaller version of those. This camera right here is actually one of those Sony Z series cameras. With the 70 to 200 Master Mark II and a 1x or 2x teleconverter, if you need it on top of a Ronin 4 Pro with middle things, that's a lot of gear to add on there. So, or companion and to control it, middle control or both. So I can do it. I can look into that a little bit more. That camera's not really made for live work like that, and it definitely can't be Genlocked. So, Genlock is, I think, it's probably going to be one of the requirements that we have to have. So, got a comment here, or you got an Intel 13th or 14th gen, and okay, yes, some specific chips have had some stability problems. It sounds like Intel's probably got it sorted out, but it was only on the upper end one. So if you're getting a mainstream processor, it doesn't have that particular issue. And AMD chips are great too. So that's always an option as well. My desktop computer that I use every day is an Intel 13900K, and I haven't had any problems with it. It's just been rock solid. Been using that. Well, I've only been using it for like 6 months. I bought it a year ago, and I didn't have the time to migrate all my software over, so I just sort of sat for 6 months until I had the chance to do that. But yeah, I haven't had any problems with it myself. I'm also not one who overclocks my stuff either, so I prefer stability over getting the fastest speeds. So I've not pushed mine. So I hopefully was not impacted by that voltage issue that they were having there. All right. So continuing the Sony ZV-E1 conversation, basically creates a Sony FR7 in a fraction of the price and a lot more usable. So yeah, okay. I mean, I'll take another look at that. So I still have another couple of weeks before I have to make a decision. So, alrighty. You know, way to use the Studio 6K Pro with the 4K constellation and prevent sensor cropping. We're testing them in the Studio 4K Pro Generation 2, but I would definitely prefer EF options over Micro Four Thirds. I don't think I was aware that the Studio 6K Pro did any sensor cropping. I mean, it's not quite a full 35 millimeter size sensor, but yeah. So, I mean, I spent a week with the Studio 6K Pro Generation 2 last year. It was okay, but there's a lot about it I didn't care for. Yeah, the fact that it couldn't nail focus with the Canon lens that I was using was a little frustrating. What else was happening? I've kind of forgotten now. The image quality on it was just not anywhere near what I get out of these Sonys. Put the two side by side, and it was night and day. The Blackmagic cameras always look soft. Yeah. Okay. Rocky, does the fader on the micro panel glitch for you? Mine is having issues. I haven't tried it yet, so let me go to a different camera here on the preview, and that looks pretty smooth. It feels smooth. Yeah, I think we're probably okay on this one. So you may have gotten a bum one. Yeah. The Canon C400 is better on nearly anything than the Burano. It does not have IBIS. Is that what this is? Yeah, but that's about it and costs half the price. For your event, the Canon C400 or FX9 in S35 mode. So those are essentially the two cameras I was looking at. So if I did the FX9, I would probably actually put another lens on it, other than the Sony lenses. And so Sony has the 18 to 135, and then I forget what their other ones is. 70 to 200. Yeah, 70 to 200. Neither of those gives me the range that I would need, so I'd have to put a third-party lens on. There are a couple of Canon options, the EF mount that I could do with an adapter. I'm a little nervous about doing that. There's also a Fuji non-lens that reasonably affordable that might work. I haven't done research to see how good that is yet. I hadn't gotten that far down the path of figuring that out. But yeah, so yeah. Belkin Thunderbolt 3 dock, display port out to HDMI isn't switcher friendly on Mac Silicon. Ultra Studio with a bit of help from OBS gets proper video out. But yeah, that's not your desktop though. So the issue with most of these DisplayPort HDMI converters is they're not doing a full retiming of things, and that's why you have to get the active adapters. In a lot of cases, those adapters are actually just telling the source device to send an HDMI signal over a DisplayPort cable rather than taking a DisplayPort signal and converting it to HDMI. So look for the word active when you go to get the converter, the adapter, and that's going to help quite a bit with compatibility with the Apple Silicon machines. So, yeah. Looking at the Red Komodo, I don't follow Red cameras anymore. I'm not a cinema guy, and Red cameras are not good for live production, so I sort of ignore them. I have friends that shoot on them, but at the same time, a lot of the friends that I have that used to shoot on Red are shooting on other things now. Like a lot of cases, they're shooting on Blackmagic. So, yeah. I'm impressed by the micro panel. How reliable is it? Well, considering I've had it for a total of 3 hours, I don't think I can make a judgment call on that just yet. So it literally showed up on my doorstep about 3 hours ago. I don't know when Blackmagic is going to update the broadcast cameras. I've yet to see the Pixis camera in the wild. I don't think I've heard from anybody who's used a Pixis yet. But those, again, are not broadcast cameras. Those are cinema cameras and different workflow. Unless you have amazing camera operators, I wouldn't try to use cinema cameras for live production. You just can run into some real problems. I mean, it's so much harder to get critical focus when you're dealing with a large sensor like that in the shallow depth of field that you typically get with that. I mean, because that's what a lot of filmmakers like. They like that shallow depth of field look, and so the cameras have been designed to be able to achieve that. In broadcast, that's a liability. Like you've got a subject that's moving around, or a camera that's on a dolly or a jib or something like that. You don't want shallow depth of field in order to make sure that your subject is in focus. So it's a different workflow, different application. I mean, they can be made to work, but you're going to drive your camera operators nuts if you got a subject that's walking around and moving all the time. I like to tell this story. I got hired to shoot right after COVID started. I got hired to shoot a bunch of boxing training videos, and the company that hired me asked me to shoot on a Canon C300 with a 70 to 200 millimeter lens at 2.8 and leave it at 2.8 the whole time. And these boxers, they're moving back and forward and just constantly moving around which way. I don't know that I got more than a few seconds of footage in focus, because I mean, it was razor thin depth of field, and he's moving around so much. It was just impossible. And autofocus just doesn't work on those photography lenses. So, yeah. Okay, first Pixis 6K have shipped. They're out in the wild now. And we'll probably start hearing some reviews. I bet there's some videos starting to pop up now. Another great camera setup would be a 6K Studio with which lens that gives you the width and depth you need. A Ronin 4 Pro with a middle control, PTZ functionality. In my experience with the 6K Studio cameras, it's just not that, just not good. So. Yeah, so I actually rented them twice. I spent a week with one time, and then I had the other one for over a month. And I shot a bunch of stuff with it, and I just wasn't impressed. In a lot of different ways. The zoom and focus demands didn't have the granularity that I needed in order to get the zoom and focus that I wanted, and the image quality was always soft, no matter what I did. And not only that, the color on those does not remotely match cameras from any other manufacturer. So if you go Blackmagic, you have to go all Blackmagic. You can tweak the color to some degree, but the degree of control that you get on those cameras, even those cameras, isn't good enough to make it match other manufacturers. So, yeah. Blackmagic needs to make an awesome 4K PTZ camera that interfaces with their console for full control. Maybe. I think they would probably tell you to just go buy control from ahead from like Telemetrics or somebody like that, most likely. So, all right. Have you appeared on the Office Hours Global Show, Doug? Yeah, a couple times. I've been on there a few times. So, it's been a while. I think the last time I was on there was a year ago. I forget when. So the main issue I have is I have to work when that show is going on. I have commitments that time of day. So, all right. Let's see, this jumped. So where am I at here? You can use EF lenses on the Micro Studio 4K by using a Metabounce speed booster. Yeah. The degree of control you get over the lens isn't quite as good as if you're using a camera that natively supports EF, but it does work. So, alrighty. Now, if you're just casually using the rack mount control panel on the desk, never seen that before. Do you think you'd ever replace that with this new mini controller? Well, no. I can't control other devices with the mini controller besides the ATEM and connected HyperDecks. I can control anything I want with this guy. That includes my streaming devices and lighting and whatever else I want. So, yeah, a big difference. So, yeah. Blackmagic, Broadcast GT were great. Blackmagic Gen 5 Color matches well with Studio 4K. You might not need all broadcast generation 2s. Within the Blackmagic family, you can make different models of cameras match. They have to be about the same age. Have to be come out about the same time because they've changed their color science so many times, used different sensors so many times. But if you're getting cameras that are roughly the same, came out roughly the same time period, and running similar firmware, you can make them different cameras match, particularly because they actually use a lot of the same sensors. Like the Pocket Cinema Camera 6K uses the same sensor as the broadcast, the studio camera 6K camera as well. So in those cases, yeah, it's easy to make them match. But if you try and take like one of the older studio cameras and make it match a modern version, it's super frustrating, and you might not even get to a point where you'd be happy with the results. So, all right, let's see. Stream Deck with Companion, Pi, blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, I have a bunch of Stream Decks, and I use them with Companion, but you don't get as many buttons as you do with the X key stuff. You know, I still have a 128 key X key controller, and I still use it. So, yeah. Would the speed booster mess with the ability to use camera control? To some degree, it does. Autofocus is the base we're looking for, but power zoom is ideal. Yeah, the autofocus with the speed booster is never as good as native, but autofocus with the Metabones speed boosters is better than anybody else's. So, I mean, there are less expensive converters out there, but the Metabones ones are much better about giving you decent autofocus and iris control and whatnot. So, would you use the micro panel for a simple live concert work? Yeah, I certainly could. Concerts are actually one of the simpler things to do in a lot of cases. You don't necessarily have a lot of like video playback that you have to deal with or whatever. But that's for a simpler setup. Yeah, the micro panel could actually work well for that. All right. Why won't Blackmagic make their more expensive 4K switchers spit out a DaVinci project file? Seems to be exclusive to the 1080 ATEM switchers. Well, they do it on the switchers that have built-in recording capability. So that's their differentiating, the feature that they're requiring in order to enable that feature. They could enable it for other workflows, but you'd have to have the ability to record timecode on whatever you're recording on, and that timecode would have to match the ATEM. So that basically means you'd be recording on separate HyperDecks from the aux outputs on the switcher. So it can be done, but I think they probably haven't done it, well, because they got more important things to do, and the number of steps that you'd have to go through to configure it and get it working right would be awkward. It'd be a lot of work. So, yeah. Hey Ryan, how's it going? Thanks for joining. Good to see you. We haven't chatted in a while. Probably should do something about that. So, yeah. Any interests in whatever this new control surface Elgato has been trading for IBC? I haven't looked at it. Are teasing? Yeah. So I don't know anything about it yet. One thing I saw at NAB this year I thought was interesting. I wish I knew the company or the name of the product, but it's a panel that's like the Stream Deck, but it's much bigger. And it was being shown right next to the Scarhoy booth. And when I was talking to Casper from Scarhoy, he pointed out that their Red Pill devices actually talk to that controller. And I just can't for the life of me remember what brand or model product that was. So, but that would be pretty cool. It's like I just find the stream deck's too small. Yeah, I have to spend too much time flipping between pages, and in the heat of the moment when you're trying to get your switcher to do exactly what you need it to do, I don't want to be having to navigate through 4 different pages in order to find the button that I need in order to do something. So that's the main reason I like the X-Keys panels. Like 128 buttons is enough to do a lot without having to have layers. And if that isn't enough, I can stack more. So, you know, I've got, it's not uncommon, or at least not before I got my 2ME panel, it wasn't uncommon for me to have my 128, 280s, and a 24 button panel all laid out on my desk. So, yeah. Would you really need timecode if you have some way to sync continuous recordings? Well, the problem is that the resolve file is going to use timecode in order to line up your clips. So, I mean, if you could guarantee that all your recorders started at the exact same time, then you could kind of ignore the timecode thing. But you know, most of us, you know, it's like start. You know, start recording on the recorders. You know, if you're not using your switcher to do the recording, there's no guarantee that your recorders are going to start at the same time. So that's where timecode comes in, making sure that those things get lined up. So, but again, you know, if you know, Blackmagic decided to support that, they could, but it's going to be a very specific configuration in order to make that work. There have been a couple people who have actually come up with software solutions to do that, like a piece of software that monitors what's going on with the ATEM and records the timestamps of each transition and source and everything. John Barker, Here to Record channel, actually did some software like that. So I know there's been other attempts to do it as well. I even considered doing it at one point, but ultimately it just seemed like a nightmare to try and get everything configured and set up just right in order to make that really work well. So what I do personally, if I need to go back and recut part of a live show, is I'll bring my line cut into the timeline and then sync up individual cameras and then just recut the specific parts that I need to change. So I'm not having to have the entire timeline with all the cuts and everything be recreated. I'm just modifying those handful of things that need to be tweaked. That usually works pretty well. I haven't had any real issues with that. So yeah, but having timecode really does make a huge difference if you can. So I've asked them if you can jam the ATEM from the Teranex Mini with timecode input. You cannot. The problem is, like, there's no way to feed timecode into the constellations. I mean, the SDI could technically have embedded timecode, but the ATEM just ignores it. So, yeah. I mean, with a software update, they could add it, but even then, like, I was never able to make my 2ME Production Studio 4K, which has a real timecode input on it. I was never able to consistently make that sync up with external timecode sources. So, Blackmagic has some compatibility issues, or has had some compatibility issues with their timecode inputs in the past. So, yeah. And with the newer HyperDecks, you could actually replace timecode on the timecode inputs. So they have a dedicated timecode input, and you can go in that, and that would replace the timecode going out the SDI output on the back. So you can always do that for the record side. Let's see. Photo they shared, it seems like the Elgato thing will be a one rack panel with 32 buttons and maybe some dials. We'll find out for sure next week. Okay. Having a cut file to start with would be nice. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm not arguing that doing it any other way is better. But yes, my point is that unless you have a device that knows everything that's going on, like an ATEM with built-in recording capability, trying to spit out a file that's going to work reliably and not cause support issues is a problem. That's all I'm saying. All I'm saying there. So, I mean, if you can guarantee that everything's being recorded on a HyperDeck on an aux output on the switcher so that it has access to time code, and you have communication with that device over either SDI or Ethernet, then you could probably pull it off. But it's an awful lot of work, and then probably something they don't want to take on the support load. You know, when you do complicated features like that, it means you're going to be getting phone calls and emails from people when it doesn't work the way they expect it to, and it's expensive. So I would guess that's the reason they haven't taken that on. So that may be why they've gone the way that they have with the instant replay through Resolve. So that may be their way to handle that. So audio visual using light flashes, that works pretty well. Light is fast enough. With sound, it doesn't. So, well, the downside to using a light source to sync cameras is that it's only updated 24, 25, 30, 48, 50, 60 times per second. So you've got that much leeway. So granted, I mean, everything kind of has to be synchronized to individual frames when you're on a video editor timeline, but there is, you know, if you got one camera where a camera flash occurs very late in the shot, and another camera where it occurs very early in the shot, when you go to edit, they could actually look like they're one frame off. So, yeah. All right, what time are we at? Okay, I actually need to run, to be honest, so I've got another meeting I need to get to. But anyway, so well, thanks everybody for joining on this. This has been kind of interesting, kind of fun. Talk about this. I'm going to spend some more time with this, and I'll probably do a full review video at some point about this new micro panel. I've been looking forward to having this. I can always use one more way to control the panel, so it's good to have that. I did an event not too long ago where I actually had to rent one of my advanced panel in addition to the one that we had, because I needed that much control over what was going on with the switcher, and having one of these there would have taken care of that need pretty well. So anyway, but yeah, for anybody who's new to the channel, please do consider subscribing. I'm going to try and do a better job of getting videos out more frequently. Since I've got this basement studio, it takes me like almost no time to just drop down here and hit record and create a video. So that's what happened a couple days ago with the new video I did about the Z200. So very impromptu. I just came downstairs and hit the record button and started talking for an hour. So yeah, if you want to ask any questions, you can certainly do that in the comment section down below, and I'll do my best to answer. But if you want to engage in kind of a longer conversation, join us over on Discord. You can find my Discord server. There's a link to it down in the description down below, or just go to djp.li/discord in your browser, and it'll take you right there. Totally free to join. There are a lot of very smart people there who are very anxious and willing to help answer questions, and they're doing such a good job of it that I'm not having to jump in and answer things quite as much as I used to. So I still monitor what's going on, but yeah. So anyway, so that's about it. So anyway, thanks everybody for watching, and have a fantastic day. We'll talk to you later.